Those eyes disguise our hide. Bright lights decide the fight. Your heart beats fast despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything, anything with you, with you. I just wanna feel anything, anything with you, with you.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy Podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome to the Clean and Filthy Podcast, where we are clean and serene with a filthy mind in between. My name is Matthew M. I am your host, and I am an addict in recovery. So very grateful to be here today for episode number 38, y'all. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for continuing to support this podcast and this vision of what we're doing in the world. I love each and every one of you. Very excited. We got a lot to cover today. My last week, man, I'm telling you, it has been absolutely nuts how crazy busy it was, which is a beautiful, beautiful byproduct of recovery. So we got a lot to cover today. So strap in. Hopefully you're ready for a really fun episode. And thank you for joining me on episode 38. So before we go any further, I got to give a huge thank you, as always, to the Clean and Filthy Podcast theme music, the incredible song Anything by Valentino Khan and Alice in Wonderland. Big shout out to Mad Decent Records for the privilege of being able to use that on this podcast. Check out all of the streaming information in the description below. Also got to give a big what up to our VIP contributors. These are our supporters who are making donations on Patreon. If you are interested in becoming one of our patrons, hey, I didn't mess it up this time. The easiest way to do that is head on over to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com. In the top right corner, we've got all of our social media links. So make sure that you have liked, commented, subscribed, followed, refollowed, retweeted, whatever you want with all the social medias, as well as click on our Patreon link where you can help support this podcast and this product by making donations. If you do, all that money goes right back into this podcast so that we can further grow, we can further better our product and create a more beautiful product for everybody. Hopefully, one day we might even get a production assistant. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But regardless, huge thank you to all of our VIP supporters. And if you do become a VIP supporter, you will get one of these awesome Clean and Filthy podcast stickers, as well as a shout out on air like these amazing people. And our supporters on the on the Clean and Filthy podcast are Alex B, Sage A, Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Liana, Clint, and Alex T. Again, huge thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and belief in this product. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Also, got to give a quick second and say that if anybody knows of somebody looking to sponsor an up-and-coming podcast, specifically in the recovery field, specifically this one, send them over to me. I would love to potentially develop a relationship with a company or a brand that would be interested in doing episode sponsorship or segment sponsorship, whichever works. Best way to get a hold of me, Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, or on any social media. I am on them all. So again, huge thank you to anybody and everybody who's listening to this podcast right now, to this episode. I really appreciate the support. I really appreciate y'all helping me help the world, and that's what I believe we're doing here. And I'm just excited. Let's keep going in this episode. So, What are we? Who am I? What aren't we? All of those things. Again, my name is Matthew M. I am an addict in recovery, and this is the Clean and Filthy podcast. We are a weekly podcast broadcasting every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. Arizona time, live on YouTube. That's right, y'all. We've got a live stream. And we would love to have you be a part of it. If you're on YouTube right now, what up, chat? Let's get that chat popping. Let's have a fun episode. I always love going back and reading the chat afterwards. So shout out to anybody who's watching the live stream right now. If you are on the live stream and you want to help support this podcast, please make sure to download this episode from any and all podcast directories. We are listed on all of them. And while you're there on YouTube, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so you get a notification as soon as we go live. If you are not on YouTube right now, if you are listening on a podcast directory, thank you. I hope you hear something you like. And if you do, please drop us a rating. Maybe share it with somebody. But if you are on that podcast directory right now and you want to participate in the live stream, best thing to do, head to the YouTube page. Like I said, make sure you are subscribed so you get that notification whenever we go live and you can be a part of the live process. We always talk about it. There's just something about live that is just a vibe to me personally. There's just that added element of it's live. It's not tape delayed. It's not edited. It's not refined. You get all of me, the basic, dirtiest, grimiest, unedited, unfiltered version of Matthew M., which is why we are clean and filthy here on the Clean and Filthy podcast. So that is where to find us. But what do we do here? Well, you ask. I have answers. Again, this is a 12-step recovery-based podcast. We are here every week talking about the things that us addicts in recovery go through on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, sometimes on a minute-by-minute basis. We talk about working steps. We talk about working traditions. We talk about concepts and spiritual principles and honestly, just the things that occur in the day-to-day lives of us addicts in recovery. This is an opportunity, if you have questions about recovery from the disease of addiction, to ask those questions and maybe get some answers, to get some information, to have a little bit better understanding on what recovery from the disease of addiction within the 12-step model looks like. So that is what we do here. The point of this podcast is to carry a light, a beacon of hope everywhere and anywhere possible and try to help as many people as possible. So we will be discussing a lot of things within the 12-step recovery model. We will be discussing my personal experience, strength, and hope on different topics and different struggles that I personally have gone through over the last 3 years and 3.75 years, 3.75 years. I just realized that as of yesterday, I'm officially 90 days away from 4 years, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So that's what we do here. But we also want to make sure to emphasize what we don't do here. And I want to make sure to stay in line with the tradition, so I will not be speaking from a point of authority or identification with any one specific 12-step fellowship. I will not be discussing what my personal home group of choice is, or what my personal fellowship of choice is, or what fellowship I do service in specifically, or I will not be giving recommendations about treatment centers or recovery residences or anything of that nature, because I want to make sure to keep as unified a perspective as I can within recovery. But if you do happen to have questions about any of the things that we do not specifically discuss here on air, of course, please reach out to me directly, Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. I love answering questions. We talk about this all the time. So if I have the ability to help somebody on their recovery journey to answer some questions, I would absolutely love that. So holla at me. But realize, if you are listening to this podcast right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. If you're an addict in recovery, welcome. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. If you're an addict who's not in recovery, welcome. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. If you're somebody who maybe was previously like my thought process of, I just like using drugs, welcome. Stick around. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Maybe you'll hear something you like. And if you're somebody out there who has no experience with the use of drugs or with the disease of addiction directly, stick around. You might hear something you like and that you need. Because, like I always say here, the beautiful thing about recovery from the disease of addiction is it is not simply about removing the substance out of my body. It is about finding the things to help me grow into becoming a better human being each and every day. That is the beauty of recovery. That is the joy of recovery. That's why I'm so hype about recovery. So if you are here right now, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the download. Thank you for the view and the stream. Whatever it is that you are doing to procure this media, thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated. I am eternally grateful to each and every person that has come across my path on this last. Wow, it's been 8 months, 9 months now journey. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been 9 months. Wow. 9 months as of yesterday. Woo! It's crazy. Crazy. This podcast has a yellow key tag. It's nuts. It's nuts. All right, Joe. Sorry, I got a little lost there. So I digress. But that's what we do. That's what we don't do. That's who I am personally. And that's what the Clean and Filthy podcast is all about, y'all. So we're going to get into our first segment of the day. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to do something a little different. Not quite as different as we had planned to, but we'll get to that. So if you're here right now, thank you for being here. If you like what you hear, rate, comment, subscribe. Make sure to share if you can. If you don't like what you hear, also make sure to let me know. I'm always looking for creative feedback and notes, so send those over. Also, for those on the live stream, you see we got group back, so order has been restored to the Clean and Filthy podcast. We're ready. I'm ready. Hopefully y'all are ready. Got my yeet juice ready. We're going to have a great episode. So let's get into our first segment of the week.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D. Recovery and development.
That's right, y'all. We are in the lab, and guess what? My lab background is actually working today. So if you're on the live stream right now, you're getting to see all of these beautiful lab equipment. This is the part of the show where we get into the nuts and bolts, the meat and potatoes, the concrete foundation of recovery. In recovery and development. Again, we are talking about 12-step recovery within this, where we've talked about steps, traditions, concepts, spiritual principles, my personal story, pieces out of the literature. That's what we discuss here in the lab. So if it's your first time in the lab, welcome. Hopefully you're wearing your lab coats. Hopefully you got your goggles and your safety glasses on. Hopefully you know how to operate a pipette and a PCR machine. If you don't, stick around and maybe you'll get to. I just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper with these science elements. It's really beneficial when your best friend works in a lab and is a learned scientist. So I start picking up on all these little things. Anyway, I digress. This is the biggest place where we discuss experience, strength, and hope regarding recovery from the disease of addiction. This is where we discuss things that us addicts go through on a daily basis. This is where we discuss the like I said, the nuts and bolts, as I use a different analogy every single time. This is the main focus of recovery. But if you are not an addict in recovery, stick around. Maybe you will hear something that you like. Maybe you'll hear something that keeps you coming back. And if it does, please make sure to download all of our previous episodes as well. We went through steps 1 through 12 in episodes 1 through 12. We went through traditions 1 through 12 in episodes 13 through 24. Then we worked through our first piece of literature. And then we went through and discussed my personal story. My personal story, my personal journey through active addiction, and then getting into recovery. And now we're supposed to have a guest today. I'll admit that. That was the plan, but there were some scheduling conflicts. There were some scheduling issues. So y'all are stuck with me for one more week before we start bringing in guests. One more week of just myself and Groot in the lab here. And then I promise we're going to have some guests. So I wanted to do something to discuss a little bit deeper my recovery journey. You know, the last 2 weeks in episodes 36 and 37, we talked about my story. We talked about my progression within the disease of addiction. We talked about my journey from when I went to treatment until today. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that. Because when we discussed it, we were running short on time, honestly. I knew like the last 2 episodes were very, very long. I'm really hoping to cut this episode down a little bit. We'll see. I talk a lot, so we'll see.
That part.
But I wanted to give a little bit more detail in terms of what my recovery journey has looked like, and also how my recovery journey has changed. Because that is something like my concept of a higher power that has grown and changed and been able to benefit my life throughout that whole time. So I wanted to just discuss how my recovery structure has changed some, or in some ways a lot, over the last 3 3/4 years. Again, I'm officially less than 90 days away from 4 years. Fucking crazy. So we talked about a lot of this stuff last week on the surface level, but we want to go deeper this week. We're going to go a little bit deeper, just a little bit deeper. All right, before I get off on a tangent, let's get into it. Got to put up the caveat that this is simply my journey. This is my journey in recovery. This is my recovery. I am not saying that this recovery, my recovery, would work for anybody else. Recovery is not a one-size-fits-all thing. I'm not saying that if you don't follow recovery the way that I follow recovery, you're wrong. I'm not saying that, and I would never say that. As we always talk about, the beautiful thing about recovery is we find what works for us and we leave the rest. And we might find that what worked for us at one point doesn't work for us anymore. Or what worked for me right now might not work for me 6 months from now. But we get to do that. And that is an absolute, absolute joy. So, welcome to my journey. Let's look at my journey a little bit deeper. We're going to go a little bit more into the ins and outs of things, starting from when I first got clean. So as we talked about last week, I got clean in Las Vegas, Nevada. I went to treatment out there and was in Las Vegas for about the first 120 days-ish of my recovery. I'll admit, my memory is not perfect, and there might be some overlap or misstatement of dates, and I was not willing last night to scroll through like 8,000 pictures to confirm every single one of these dates, but these are all estimations. So for the first 0 to 120 days, we talked about I was in treatment, I went to a recovery residence, I was doing IOP, and I didn't have a job. So I was going to meetings between 3 and 5 times a day, damn near every single day. You know, we talk about in the rooms, the best thing to suggest to a newcomer is hit 90 meetings in 90 days, because you get into that habit and you develop those relationships and you find your people. And for me personally, I would say I hit no less than 250 meetings in that 90 days. You know, other than Sundays, because Sundays in Las Vegas, one thing I love about Las Vegas is that there's meetings from 6 a.m. until midnight in my fellowship of choice every single day, except Sundays. Sundays are a little lacking. But other than Sundays, most days it was 3 to 5 meetings. And I had a sponsor. And I had 2 home groups that I went to very consistently. And the one home group, it met every single night of the week, and I was there most nights of the week. Most nights of the week, I went to that meeting. It was at 9 o'clock at night, so I was able to do whatever I needed to in the day, which I didn't have a job, so there wasn't much that I needed to do except go to IOP and go to more meetings, and then eventually start working out. But then by 9 o'clock, I would always hit that meeting. I hit that meeting damn near every single night. And I started working my steps. And I started developing my circle, both in Las Vegas and back here in Arizona when I would come into town. You know, doing the things that we talk about. You know, we always say, you come early and stay late. I got there early, and I met people, and I walked up to people I didn't know and was uncomfortable walking up and vaping next to somebody and then saying, hey, what's up? You here for the meeting? Like, it was awkward and it was uncomfortable and it was difficult at times. But those type of things made it so that the next time I showed up, it wasn't as awkward. And then the next time I showed up, hey, they're going out to dinner and they invited me? Sure, I'll go to dinner. I don't have money though. Well, that's okay. Just come through. We'll take care of you. Wait, these motherfuckers are going to have me come through and gave me a couple slices of pizza? Word? Okay. Well, maybe they want something from me, right? Again, addict thinking. Addict thinking, not understanding unconditional love, being broken, being confused. But I still kept going, still kept doing it, still kept accepting those things, realizing at the end of the day that, in fact, nothing was wanted in return. Just me being an addict in recovery. All right. So I continued doing that. And then I started going to some recovery events and participating in things, whether it was the alumni meeting at my treatment center or a campfire camping RV trip down at Lake Mead. Whatever it was, if there was an opportunity for something, I said, yeah. Going to men's spiritual breakfast, going to conventions that were in other states, whatever it was, if it was something that was there that I could physically do, I would be there. I would be there because I knew that that's what other people were doing. And I knew that the way I would become more a part of and have more friends and to develop more connections was by doing that. So at this time, I didn't have any actual service commitments like I do today. I didn't have anything that was assigned to me directly, but I was always offering to be of service. At my home group, they always needed somebody to clean up the coffee. And every single night, my hand would be up. I will help clean up the coffee. I will help mop. I would always get there early to ask if I could get a reading, to ask if I could be of service by setting up chairs or anything that the chairperson might need. Or be a greeter, give out the hugs before the meeting. Because I then felt a part of, and some element of that built this level of responsibility within me. And I'm sure there was early on some element of ego, some element of like, oh, I'm going to get a reading. So every single time I get a reading, people are going to see how cool I am that I read every single meeting. There probably was that. I've progressed enough in this recovery journey to admit that character defects were running rampant early on. I didn't know what a fucking character defect was. I hadn't identified it to therefore work on it. So a lot of the shit that I did early on maybe was coming from a place of character defects. But at the end of the day, it's still in that moment was me being of service and still helped keep me clean. Still helped keep me clean. So after about 4 months, we talked about it last week, I moved back to Arizona. And thankfully, the home group that I had identified on one of my previous trips to Arizona, that I had attended on one of my previous trips to Arizona, that I had already started developing relationships within, thanks to the convention that I came to with 100 Days Clean, thanks to the being a member at that home group and talking to people before the meeting and after the meeting. I now had a safe place to reintegrate back into society in Arizona. And even though there were less meetings in Arizona than there are in Vegas, at least in the fellowship of my choice, I decided, what am I going to do? I need more meetings. I can't go from going to 3 to 5 meetings a day to only going to 1 meeting a day. So I started to go to a couple meetings in another fellowship just to have a meeting, just to have something to do after my 7 o'clock meeting got done. So after my 7 o'clock meeting got done, hang out for a little bit, hit the next meeting. And that's what I did most days of the week. And I was constantly hanging out with members of the fellowship. I still didn't have a job. So during the day, I would be with different groups of people from different meetings or from different circles, if you will. Or I'd go to the gym or I'd do step work. But I was constantly around other people from the fellowship. I was never physically alone. And it wasn't like it was a conscious choice that I was like, I shouldn't be alone. I need to be around people. It was just the fact that I was making so many connections with people, and there were so many of other people like myself who didn't have a job and they were living in a recovery residence, and they wanted to get out of that house for a couple days or for a couple hours. So they'd hit me up. I had a car. What do you want to do? Whatever. You just want to chill at my place and do some step work? Okay, let's do that. Oh, you want to go up to the coffee shop and hang out? Okay, let's do that. Oh, you just want to sit here and watch Rick and Morty reruns? Let's do that. But I was never alone. I was never alone, so my mind never had the time to think about other things. I know for an addict like myself, when I'm alone, I know how squirrely my mind can get. I know that my thought process will start sounding a lot more logical if I don't have somebody around me to bounce ideas off of and to share what I'm thinking and feeling. So that's what we did. I was always around somebody. And the beautiful thing is I knew that if I was always around somebody, using was going to be a lot more difficult to do. It was going to be a lot more difficult to do. And I made sure that I was surrounding myself with other people who were serious about their recovery at that time. Some of those people are still in my life to this day. Some of those people are not. Some of those people are dead. And that's a sad reality of recovery, but that is a reality of recovery. Addicts, if they're not working a program, relapse is always around the corner. But I love some of those, a lot of those early memories were everything to me. Just acting stupid, enjoying people, developing who I was as a human being. Those were some amazing times. The first 6 months of my recovery have more memories than I could ever write down of those type of things. And none of them were like these massive life-changing moments in and of themselves. But when they were coupled together and added together and added together, and day after day I was around love, and day after day I was around happiness, and I was around friendship, and I was around kindness, that kept adding up to it becoming somewhat of a life-changing type of thing. It wasn't like a snap life-changing thing, but it developed over time and are all part of the grand sum that is my current reality. And it was around then that I got my very first actual service commitment. I actually was now going to be chairing a meeting. And that was exciting. I got to chair a meeting at my home group, as well as be a greeter on other nights, because I was at this meeting 7 days a week, sometimes more than that, because we used to run morning or 12 p.m. meetings on Saturday and Sunday prior to the pandemic. So there were times that I was chairing 2 meetings and a greeter on 2 other meetings, because that's where all of my friends were. It was the thing at 7 o'clock at night. Everybody was going to be there. Whether we were hanging out beforehand or if we hung out afterwards, whatever. But every night at 7 p.m., the vast majority of us were there because we were all in the same boat. We didn't have a job. We went to meetings. And again, the benefit of a 7-day-a-week home group is that there were 7 days worth of service opportunities. So I took advantage of that. And then after the meetings or before the meetings, we were always hanging out. We had movie nights and slumber parties and game nights and going to look at the stars. And what was cool about this development is that there were different groups of people in my life. There were some people who maybe had a curfew at their sober living or their recovery residence, so they weren't able to hang out much after the meeting, or definitely not after the second meeting. So those are the people I would hang out during the day with. And then there was the other group of people who either had later curfew or didn't live in some type of spot like that, had their own place. So then that would be the group of people that we would hang out afterwards. And so there were always people around me. And yeah, there was some interlap between those groups. And sometimes we'd get big groups together and whatever. But there was always something going on. And again, this wasn't a conscious choice where I was like, I need to have every single hour of every day filled. That wasn't the thought process. It's just a byproduct of being a part of the herd. It's the byproduct of being a part of the community. And it was a byproduct of not having those other responsibilities in my life. And this continued. This continued until I got a job. And, that meant my recovery was going to change a little bit. It meant that maybe I wasn't going to be able to go to as many meetings at that specific time, but I was going to find other meetings to go to. Now that I'm working doesn't mean that I don't go to meetings. It meant that I went to different meetings if needed. It meant that I did other elements of my recovery to keep it balanced. And thankfully, the job I was working, I was able to work my job around my meetings for the most part. I had flexibility within that. And then if there were times that I wasn't working, then it was what I just talked about before. It was constantly being around people. It was going to meetings. It was being of service. It was continuing the things that had been working for me. Why would I change them if they've been working?
That part.
And even when I was working night shift, I ended up working at a treatment center for a few months as the overnight guy. And even when I was doing that, working 60 hours a week on overnights, I was still able to make meetings. Sometimes I was exhausted. Sometimes that meant that I wasn't going to the gym. That's what that often meant. Sometimes that meant I wasn't able to hang out with people like I'd been doing. That's often what it meant. But I still would do everything in my power to make meetings, because we say in the rooms that meeting makers make it. And I fully believe that. I fully believe that. So if I have to give up on some social desire to make sure that that meeting is hit, especially early on, that's what I was going to do, and that's what I did. So then fast forward a little bit to between 1 year and 1.5 years clean. About 1 year to 18 months clean, somewhere in that time. These are all things that kind of occurred during that time. Some a little bit before a year, some a little bit after, or whatever. But I became the GSR for my home group. And the GSR is the group service representative. That's the person that represents their home group. And this was like, they had to waive the clean time a little bit for me so that I would be able to do it, because I didn't have a year yet when I first started. And they said that they thought I could do it. And it wasn't even that they thought I could do it as much as nobody else was willing to do it. That's how a lot of service happens. We get blindsided, hoodwinked, pressured into service, because a lot of us are scared to do things for ourselves. A lot of us live in fear for so long that we don't feel we're capable of doing these things. That was my story in a lot of ways. So when it was said, hey, you should be the GSR. You should be the alt GSR. That's how they get you. Anybody out there who's listening, if somebody says you want to be an alt or a vice to something, realize that means you're going to be doing the service position that you're alternating or vicing for. That's how it works. Not always explained, but that's how it works. There's a pro tip. You're welcome. Which for me, I loved, because now I got to develop more. I got to learn more skills. I got to get more responsibility. I got to become more of a member of my home group. I get more involved. So now I'm going to the area service meeting because I'm the alt GSR. And now I'm getting entrusted with responsibilities. And then the current GSR ended up moving out of state. So now I'm the GSR. And I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm lost, confused, scared. But you know who was always there? The fellowship to help me. The fellowship to say, hey, bro, this is how you do this. No, this is what an idea request is. This is what it means. This is the guidelines that we follow. And the same way that I do it for others is because that's how it was done for me. Right about this time, I started doing work with H&I, hospitals and institutions. Again, I was asked to speak at an H&I panel. And then when I got done speaking, they said, hey, you should have this be your meeting. So then that became the meeting that I took into a treatment center. As we talked about last week, H&I is a part of my story, and that is something that resonates with me so much. I love doing H&I because that's where I first truly heard the message. And that really, really means something in my heart and in my recovery journey. So now I'm chairing a meeting in a treatment center. And about this time, I became a member of the Public Relations Subcommittee, where now I'm helping come up with ideas to how we can get the message of recovery out to the public. And I joined the Entertainment and Fundraising Subcommittee for the Regional Convention, the same committee that today, 2.5 years later, I'm the chair of. During this time, I completed all 12 of my steps. I was sponsoring men and taking them through the steps. I was an active member of my home group, attending the business meetings, going to 2 or 3 live meetings each week. And I'll say that, it was down to 2 or 3 meetings because now I was being of service in other ways. And about this time, I started getting my son a lot more. So I had the opportunity to be a parent on a more consistent and in-depth basis. So when I'm having him for 4 nights, 5 days, that meant that those were nights I wasn't going to be able to go to a meeting. But I made other elements work. I got more involved in service elements. And I still made sure that the days that I didn't have him, I was going to a meeting. And if I really needed a meeting, I had people that could watch him so I could get to a meeting. Because recovery will always be and has always been the most important thing in my life. And it has to be. We talk about that all the time. So now we're at about 2 years clean. Right after I took my 2 years clean, the pandemic blew up. One of the last group events that I really remember, that I really participated in, was in getting my 2 years clean. Because about a month later, our home group shut down. Our home group shut down because of the pandemic, because of COVID. And there was terror, there was worry, there was confusion, there was fear, there was unknown. All of these things that are really difficult to deal with in general and exceptionally difficult to deal with as a fucking addict in recovery. Because we struggle with control. We struggle with the unknown. And now it's a worldwide unknown that still isn't fully known. Probably won't be for another 10 years. And there was a lot of worry and confusion. But the fellowship as a whole came together. The home group my home group, became the first home group in Arizona of my fellowship of choice to transition to the virtual platform, to transition to Zoom. And if I'm not mistaken, we only missed one day. We only were shut down for one day. Maybe we didn't even shut down. Maybe there wasn't a day off. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask one of my buddies from the home group. But we were now online. And I got the privilege of chairing the first virtual meeting. And we had issues. We were Zoom bombed, and there were connectivity issues and screen sharing issues, and there were tons of issues and fear and drama. But you know what? We had a meeting. We had a meeting, and we were able to transition now to make recovery work in whatever the situation was going on in the world. And now guess what? I don't have a job again. Now meetings are on my computer. I can put headphones on. So now my recovery journey starts to look different again. And now I'm back to going to 3 or 5 meetings a week. 3 to 5 days a week I'm going to meetings. And some of those days I would go to 2 or 3 meetings. Because now all of a sudden my old home group in Vegas, they're on Zoom. So let's check that out. Oh, and now I'm getting invited to this meeting in Boston? Let's go check that out. Oh, okay, I could go to California? Oh, let's sign me up. Wait, I could go around. They got a meeting in Australia? Yo, hello, mate. Let's go. And that became the new exciting thing. And for a lot of people, when the pandemic happened, there was immense fear that had no outlet. I'm so blessed to be an addict because I had that immense fear and that immense unknown, and I had an outlet. I was able to go into a meeting. I was able to feel a part of and share my fear and share my pain, because pain shared is pain lessened.
That part.
Like, that's how we operate. So now my recovery's looking different again. My recovery's looking different, and now I'm going to a lot more meetings. Because now I can go to my meetings sitting in a chair, possibly with pants on, possibly not. It's unknown. I could turn my camera off if I wanted to. But I'm having that opportunity to get into meetings. So I'm going to more meetings now. Don't have a job, go to more meetings. And during this time, all of the different the service structure went online. So now I'm getting to be a part of different subcommittees. I'm getting more involved. I became a member of the activities subcommittee, the outreach subcommittee, the phone line subcommittee, as well as sponsorship behind the walls, which is a form of H&I where we work with inmates and we work through the steps with inmates who are incarcerated. And that was a beautiful thing. And personally, I love that service was virtual. I wish all service was still virtual. I wish I never had to go to another in-person area meeting again. It is so much more enjoyable to be able to do it from the comfort of my own home, possibly without pants on. To me, I love that. I'm not saying all recovery meetings should be virtual. I'm not saying that, because there is an energy and a vibe about being at an in-person meeting that I cannot dispute. But service meetings that are there simply to conduct the service necessary within the fellowship, put that shit online, y'all. Please. Like, please. But now, after celebrating my 3 years clean virtually, now things are starting to open up again. Now, the pandemic ain't over, but most of America's done with it. So now it's time to start reintegrating into society after, a year, now year and a half past. And I'm still struggling with that. When things first started opening up, man, there was so much fear. There was so much confusion. There was so much just unknown. And I don't operate well in unknown. But because of the fellowship, because of the people in my life, I got to walk through that fear and that confusion. I got to share that fear and confusion. I got to state my feelings. And some people agreed, some people didn't. But regardless, I had an opportunity to do that because of the fellowship. And like I said, this is something I'm still struggling with at times. Finding a level of comfort and balance now that things are opening up has been difficult. Reintegrating with society has been difficult. I've talked about this on air a couple times, where there were times, those first couple times that I went to an in-person meeting, I felt physically fucking drained. The first time that we did something, we went to dinner after the meeting, I felt drained. This is from the dude who, in early recovery, was hanging out with other addicts in recovery from the time I from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep, with different groups of people, going to this meeting, then going to this group of people and going to this meeting, and then going with this group of people to out look at stars until 3 a.m. That was my life, and I was ready to go all seconds of the day. And now I go to one meeting and one dinner, and I'm like, God damn. But as things open up more and I become more comfortable with what's okay with me personally, I start to develop that social element again. I start to feel more comfortable. I start to feel less drained. Things are starting to feel somewhat normal again. That balance is starting to develop. It's a little difficult because when all of service was online, I undertook a lot of service positions. And now we're back in person for a lot of them, and it's a little more difficult. But it's finding a balance. And there's a part of me that will be forever grateful that COVID forced me to do something different. Because of COVID, I was able to develop a podcast and launch a podcast and get more involved in service. And that's a beautiful thing. And even though it's a little scary trying to figure out what my recovery looks like today, it's a process. So what does the recovery journey or the structure of Matthew M look like with 3 years and 9 months clean? What does it look like? Well, for me, I pray every day. I remember to keep my recovery first every day. I also actually am acknowledging and taking a look at the importance of my mental health, of taking a second, especially with how draining being back in the social environment can be at times. I'm remembering to take a second and to have that moment for myself. Right now, I would say I'm going to usually about 2 meetings a week, 2 actual meetings, not service meetings, not subcommittee meetings, actual meetings. I'm going to about 2 meetings a week. And I'm not saying that I don't need or want to go to more meetings. I'm not one of those people who's like, man, I've got enough time. I only need to go to 1 meeting every month. That's not what I'm saying. And that's not what I want. Because we talk about so often, the meeting is where the message is carried. The importance of the meeting, that's where the message comes through. That's where I have the opportunity to give back what was so freely given to me. Being of service is also a beautiful thing, and it is an important thing within my personal journey. But meetings are where the magic happens, y'all. So I would love to go to more meetings than I currently do. But it's about balancing. It's about balancing my parenting, my service work, my social life, especially post-COVID, going to the gym, working, developing an independent podcast from the ground up, trying to look at other aspects of life that are interesting to me, life goals, life desires, things that I want for myself within this process. That's all part of balancing. And balancing that with my meeting attendance has been difficult at times. Honestly, because a lot of service area service meetings occur at 7 p.m. during the week. That's just how it is. So a lot of my weeknights are booked with other service, commitments that I've made. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm not saying that's how it should be. I'm not saying that's how I would like it to be. But what I'm saying is that is what it is currently. Who knows what it's going to look like 6 months from now, 5 months from now, 10 months from now, 20 months from now. Who knows? But one of the greatest joys of recovery is the journey of this, of the balancing. And yes, it can get overwhelming at times. It can get a little stressful. But there's this element of getting to live and enjoy the life that we're creating in recovery. That is one of the greatest reasons for me to be in recovery. I know that the reason I have such a full life today, the reason that I'm able to be a parent and be a friend and be a member of the fellowship and be able to carry that message and be a good employee and do a podcast is because of recovery. That is why I have a life today. And now that I have developed a life in recovery, I can't forget about that. I can't forget about that because I have to give away what was so freely given to me. So when I'm incredibly busy and a phone call comes in from the phone line that I'm a member of, and maybe I don't want to answer it, I do because I'm giving back what was so freely given to me. Because if we don't do that, if we don't continue to carry on that compassion and that unconditional love and that empathy, who's going to? Who's going to? So today my recovery looks a lot different than what it did. I'm currently the vice chair of my area. Again, vice chair. You know what that means? Probably going to make me be chair. No, I'm probably going to get to. We'll change the wording there. I'm the education chair for our Tri-Area Public Relations Subcommittee. I'm a member of the activity subcommittee, the outreach subcommittee, and the phone line subcommittee. Again, most of those meet at 7 p.m. So a lot of those days, I'm not able to go to a physical in-person meeting or even a virtual meeting. I'm the regional convention, entertainment, and fundraising chair, again, for our next regional convention. And these are all things I get to do. These are all ways that I'm able to help give back what was so freely given to me. And it might not be in the same way as going to an in-person meeting. So I'm trying to implement more in-person meetings, or at least more virtual meetings, into my schedule. Because right now it's usually about 2 meetings a week. And I'd love to go to more than that. It's just undoing 18 months worth of what isolating within COVID has done. And that's a process. You know, I have a couple active sponsees who are actively doing work. Definitely not as many as I had prior to COVID. That's for sure. But I've got a couple who are doing work, which is beautiful. I'm back doing work as well. I'll admit I took an unintentional break off of doing tradition and step work. I did. Part of developing this podcast meant a lot of my energy went into this. Not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. Now I'm getting back into that. And I'm constantly in contact with other recovering addicts. Like recovering addicts who are doing it. The people that help lift me up through the hard times. The people that I do the same for them. Like there has not been a single day, not a single day over the last 3 years and 9 months and 1 day since I've gotten clean that I haven't had some contact with other addicts in recovery. And it might not be super hanging out. You know, it might not be going to a meeting. It might not be even a phone call or even a hug. It might just be a fast text or a snap message. But there's always been contact every single day. And again, I'm not saying that this is the right way to do recovery. I'm not saying this is the wrong way to do recovery. Or even that this way is safe for somebody else to do recovery, because this is my story. This is my recovery journey. Maybe it would work for somebody else, maybe it wouldn't. But for me, it has been working for the last 3 years and 9 months. Working through stress, working through sadness, joy, pain, confusion, love, pandemic-induced isolation. And through all of those things, I've never been alone because of the fellowship. And while a lot of things look a lot different within my personal recovery, within my recovery circles of friends, within my meeting attendance, within my service commitments, the one thing that has never changed is the fellowship and the love that I have felt from it. I can say absolutely that I am not the same person that I was when I first got clean. The things that mattered 3+ years ago, the things I felt that were important 3+ years ago, my feelings on life are exponentially different than what they were. And that makes me so excited to see what my recovery journey will look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, or even simply tomorrow. Because every single day that I am clean, every single day that I am blessed with another day on this earth, not suffering from the disease of addiction actively, every single day that I'm clean, I have an opportunity to grow and become the best version of myself. Same as it is for each and every other addict out there. So I just wanted to give a little bit deeper into what my personal recovery structure looks like, what my recovery routine is, if you will. I'm sure I could have gone even deeper than that, but that's what we got. Again, how did we go so long? My God, I talk too much. Fuck. This is supposed to be a fast episode, and all right. Well, that's what we got for this week in the lab. That's what we got. Hopefully, everything's going to get lined up properly. So next week, we're going to have our first guest in the lab. So clean off those pipette tips, take off your safety goggles, and let's get ready for our next segment of the week, entitled My Favorite Moment of the Week. This is the part of the show where we talk about something that has occurred over the last 7 days, or really since our last episode, which thankfully was just 7 days ago. This might be something from pop culture, news, social media, sports, entertainment, TikTok, whatever it is. This is not specifically recovery related. There might be some recovery related topics in here, but we are here to talk about fun shit that has occurred over the last 7 days. And I like talking about fun shit. I like seeing shit that makes me laugh. So if you have anything that has occurred over this next week, specifically from the world of TikTok, because I am not on TikTok. I will never be on TikTok. That's a lie. I will be on Pornhub before I'm on TikTok. Send them over to me on any social media or directly at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. I would love to check them out. And while we do not currently have a Bang sponsorship, we have to give a quick shout out to Bang Energy. I am a Bang can. Drink Bang. My current favorite afternoon flavor is my key lime pie. Get your 300 milligrams of caffeine. Be like the host of the Clean and Filthy podcast. Get some Bang all up in you. Open your mouth wide and gulp it down.
Phrasing?
Delicious. All right, y'all. We're back. And it's time to discuss things that have happened over the last week. First off, got to talk about, we mentioned it last week, that I was interviewed for an episode of Enneagram Conversations. That episode is officially available to be checked out. I put the link in the description down below. It's about a 50-minute interview with myself and another person who's the same Enneagram type as myself. I think it was a lot of fun. I got to go back and re-listen to it, but hopefully everybody checks it out and let me know what you guys think. My weekly fitness update. I worked out 4 times this last week. I am currently 211.2 pounds. Don't love that. Also didn't eat great, but one beautiful thing is my best friend is back wanting to work out. She's been inspired to partake in like a 10K or something like that, half marathon. And so she's wanting to run, which means I'm actually getting cardio done. So shout out to her. Got to do a quick TV wrap up. Didn't really watch anything that massive this week. I did finish Wentworth. Hooray. Well done show. Cool ending. Corny ending, but cool ending. But there are so many trailers that have dropped over the last week that I just have to mention. Trailer for Atlanta Season 3 looks fire. Trailer for Season 4 of Stranger Things looks fire. Trailer for Season 6 of The Expanse looks fire. Ozark Season 4 is dropping soon. And Rick and Morty Season 6 has been confirmed for 2022. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I had a beautiful honor of speaking at my home group this past week. There's always something about speaking in my home group that is very special to me. That room is very special to me. I've spoken at a lot of meetings, especially since the pandemic made it so I could share in a meeting around the world from the comfort of my own kitchen table here. But speaking in my home group is definitely a different vibe. Plus, I was the MC for a recovery blues fest event that was super successful, so that was a lot of fun. It's always nice putting together planning and it paying off. But a funny thing occurred that like shows how my addict thinking goes and shows how horribly miswired my brain is. Because immediately after speaking and immediately after this successful event on Saturday, the 2 things I wanted to do more than anything was eat incredibly unhealthy food and have tons of sex. That's where my addict mind reverts to. It's like, hey, something good happened. You should reward yourself with food and sex. Why that is where my brain goes to is a problem. The question of why is something that I'm currently working through within my recovery journey and with my personal therapist. So, wanted to do both of those things, didn't do either one of those things. Hooray for healthy, not rewarding for things that don't deserve a reward. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting thing. Going to do a quick sports recap. Ravens versus the Dolphins. Ugh, there isn't much I got to say about this. Thursday Night Football. Ravens came in as an 8.5-point favorite in Miami. Miami was 2-7 with an injured quarterback. This was everything. This was very much a trap game, and that's exactly what it was. After starting the game with a 9-play drive that led to a field goal, and then a second 8-play drive that led to a missed field goal, there were 7 straight punts by the Ravens. And I was a little sad at first that I wasn't going to be able to watch the game. I was speaking at my home group that night. So I'm sitting in the car watching the game prior to going into the home group and got to see Justin Tucker miss a field goal. And that was a bad omen in my mind. I internalized it like that's a bad omen and I'm going to do a horrible job sharing. Apparently I did a good job sharing, but the Ravens didn't do a good job playing football. And after 7 straight punts, I turned the game back on after the meeting in the third quarter, and the Ravens were down 6-3. So I got to glance at the fourth quarter during the business meeting that was partaking. After the actual meeting, we had our business meeting, and it was ugly, man. It was ugly. Miami ended up winning 22-10. Ravens are now 6-3. Thankfully, the Browns lost. The Bengals were on bye, and the Steelers tied with the Lions. Like, y'all Steelers fans out there, y'all okay? Like, okay, we lost to Miami, but y'all tied the Lions. Y'all are officially the closest that the Lions have gotten to a win all season. The only time they haven't gotten a loss all season is to y'all Steelers. So how y'all doing out there, Steelers fans? Anyway, I digress. Also, shout out to Lamar Jackson. Louisville retired his jersey, so that was pretty cool. Got to talk about the Cardinals. I didn't see a single snap of this game. I will talk about why I didn't in my favorite moment of the week. But from the recap, I'm quite happy that I didn't see a single snap of this game. With no Kyler, no D-Hop. Colt McCoy was out there playing like Keltec, and he got broken like a Keltec does. He got injured. It was also Cam Newton's first game back in Carolina, and McCaffrey balled out. Cardinals were down 23-0 at halftime, y'all. Ended up losing 34-10. And now Cardinals are 8-2. Thankfully, the 49ers lost to the Rams. I'm sorry, the 49ers beat the Rams, and Seattle lost. So Cardinals are still in first place. Gang, gang. Also, I ended up going 1-1 in fantasy. I officially have had my first 2-game winning streak of the season. Probably will be my only 2-game winning streak of the season. But overall, I went 1-3. Got to real quick talk about NBA because the Suns are on a current 9-game winning streak with an overall record of 10-3, tied with the Washington Wizards. How the fuck, Washington Wizards? For the second best record in basketball, only behind the fucking Warriors. Fucking Warriors. Anyway, Suns are playing very solid team basketball. Like, and it isn't all just Booker or all just Ayton or all just CP3. We've had big games. We had like a 30-something point game from Frank Kaminsky. Frank the Tank, motherfucker. Well done. Big game tomorrow night on Wednesday against Dallas, so that'll be interesting. Got to do a quick Brazilian Grand Prix recap for all of my maybe one motorsports fans out there in the Clean and Filthy podcast community. But crazy drama from Sao Paulo, yo. First, Lewis Hamilton failed his inspection after qualifying because of a wing issue. His DRS zone opening was too big. So they add some subtractions to his grid placement because of that. Then Max Verstappen gets hit with a $50,000 fine because he went over and touched Lewis Hamilton's rear wing. And you ain't allowed to do that. So he got fined $50K. So then Hamilton's starting position, which had already been down to 5th after the sprint race, gets dropped to 10th because he had to swap an engine. So he came back after starting 10th on the grid and won the whole fucking race, y'all. Just won the whole fucking race. He's like, you want me to, man, fuck y'all. I'm going to win this shit. So now, after winning the race and Verstappen coming in second, Max Verstappen has a 14-point lead over Lewis Hamilton with 3 races to go. Shit's about to get fun. I really would not mind a DNF did not finish from Verstappen next race, just to really have it be drama. I don't know. Also got to talk about the manly Marvel men finally were able to coordinate their schedules and go see the Eternals. Got to say, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack. We're not going to do it all today. We're just going to discuss some basic points of it. There was a ridiculously stuffed cast with an Oscar-winning director and a 2 hour and 37-minute runtime, y'all. A lot to fucking unpack. And I don't want to go too deep into it because I'm honestly still kind of processing it myself. I didn't get out the movie till like 10:30 last night, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around some things. So I'm not going to give a 5 out of 5 star rating, but I will say some positives and some negatives. Positive, it was very well filmed. It was very well filmed from a director, cinematography's perspective, very pretty backgrounds and sets. I'll say that. Also loved that it brought up the Celestials and gave some information about that. And bringing up the Celestials expands the MCU immensely, literally. Cast was very well cast. That isn't a great sentence, but hopefully you get what I mean. I'm curious to see where they develop a couple of them going forward that were introduced in this movie and have a lot more importance based on the future, also based on the after credit scenes. I think they did a good job explaining what the Eternals are in the MCU and where they have been. I always hate when they introduce new characters and they don't explain why they weren't there through all of the events that have occurred in the MCU. So they did a good job with that. And both the mid-credits and end-credit scenes were sick. I also thought it was interesting that they did 2 different nods to DC Comics. Like they mentioned both Batman and Superman. So that was kind of, I either really liked it or it was a little on the nose, and I don't know which one it was. It was interesting. But it's interesting to think of, like, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there can't be Marvel Comics because Marvel Comics are what are actually happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So are DC Comics a thing? Like, do the superheroes of Marvel do the same thing as normal people and read DC Comics? And it's kind of ironic that this episode, this movie, they would discuss DC when there were 2 blatant DC clones in this movie, both of Superman as Icarus, and then also the Flash. Like, they were direct ripoffs. Also, got to say hooray for representation and progression. I hate that we still have to even discuss this, and hopefully sometime soon it won't be news when there's actual representation in a movie. Like, we won't be talking about the first gay kiss in the MCU. That won't be like something that we have to really discuss. But it is still, apparently. Also, I thought it was pretty cool that the inclusion of having a hearing impaired actress. So there was the sign language element that I thought really added a lot to the overall feel. Plus, I love anytime I can get Brian Tyree Henry getting more shine. Cannot wait for season 3 of Atlanta. Let's go, Paperboy. Paperboy. All right. Anyway, things I didn't love. There was too much to unpack, y'all. There were too many Eternals. There was too much backstory. There were too many flashbacks through thousands of years of time to unpack that aforementioned backstory. There was too much. Plus, the pacing was really off to me. It felt super slow moving, and then something massive would occur. And then it would go back to super slow moving, and then some massive revelation. And it felt out of pace the whole time. Honestly, I would have really, really preferred if the Eternals would have been a Disney Plus show release over 10 or 12 episodes so that we could have gotten better connected with the characters to understand what their powers were rather than having everything condensed down and given to us in like massive stuff your face buffet. I would have preferred more delectable individual plates instead of just a trough of here you go. Personally, That's what I say. But this was a massive thing for MCU, so there was no way they were going to just release it on Disney Plus. I also don't love that Gemma Chan already had an MCU credit to her name. She was already Minerva in Captain Marvel, so I didn't love that, but I thought she did a great job as Cersei. I thought she was solid. I also didn't love that Richard Madden was Icarus, even though he did a solid job. He gave off such hardcore Sebastian Stan vibes, which isn't his fault. Like, the dude just kind of looks like Sebastian Stan. So I guess blame his genetics. But Winter Soldier is one of my absolute favorite characters in the MCU. And even though this character was not the Winter Soldier, and it wasn't the same actor, it was somebody that kind of looked like him, which made me think about the fact that I like the Winter Soldier more than I like his character, and kind of took away from his character as Icarus. Also, one thing that they were this big deal was made of that we had our first on-screen MCU sex scene. That was this big deal. First one, big deal. We had superheroes fucking. Ooh, yeah. Okay, that's cool. Cool, whatever. I don't really give a fuck if my superhero movies got cheeks clapping or not. I mean, that's not what I'm watching superhero movies for, but if they feel that it's enhancing the storyline to get some cheeks clapping, whatever. I don't really care. But the thing that irritated me is in the sex scene, it was a standard, normal, human, male and female anatomy body part sex scene, right? Well, why the fuck do we assume that these motherfucking interstellar fucking celestial beings that are full of this goddamn cosmic energy, not human, why do we expect that they fuck like humans? Why is that a thing? Like, is it just that our minds are so incapable of the thought process that their sex might be something completely different than just like P and V, that we can't establish that? Like, why couldn't they have just been like sitting back to back and their brains were fucking or something? I don't know. I just thought that was kind of basic. Like, why do we assume that these two cosmic non-human entities are going to fuck like humans? Like, if they wanted the first instance of sex on screen to have been like Tony and fucking Pepper Potts, okay. If they wanted the first sex on screen to be Happy Hogan and Aunt May, okay. At least they're human. They wanted, well, I guess that they couldn't have done that. I was gonna say Spider-Man and Zendaya, but yeah, that probably would have really not worked. All right, let's just strike that. But like, if it would have been something that involved humans, I would have been all right with it. But sorry, I just went on like a 5-minute tangent about alien sex that I don't know, man. I digress.
Help me!
I fucking need it, apparently. So overall, I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. Wasn't a great movie. It was a good movie. And there was some potential for the future that I'm excited about within the MCU, especially the end credit scene. So yeah, I'm excited about it. But now we're going to get into my actual favorite moment of the week. And my actual favorite moment of the week happened on Sunday while I was not watching football. That's why I saw literally the least amount of football this past week than I have all season. And I am so good with it because I attended the Nitro Rally Cross down at Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park. This is a 2-day event full of amazing drivers. And, you know, we discuss cars and racing a lot on this podcast. But I have always loved rally racing. Like, since I was early on, barely teenager, I've always enjoyed rally racing. I followed the WRC championship for a lot of time. Like, I literally totaled my first car, my old 96 black Toyota Camry, attempting to be Colin McRae, rest in peace, shout out, driving this front-wheel drive 4-cylinder Camry through the dirt tracks of the desert till I missed a turn, took the bottom of my transmission clear off, hit a rock. Yeah. So I've always loved rally, but I was always a little hesitant to rallycross. For those who don't know, rally is done in, it's also called stage rally. And it's one car at a time with a co-driver or a navigator on real roads that have been closed down for this race or through trails in the woods or things like that. And you're driving against the clock. You're racing against the time. Everything's timed. It's not a great spectator sport. Unless it's on TV, which requires a helicopter and lots of cameras. It's not a good spectator sport, especially not a good live spectator sport. It's just not. So rallycross is multiple cars on a track at the same time, on a specifically built track. And there's built-in jumps and turns and chicanes and banks and a thing called a joker lap, which is something that every driver has to do at least one time in the routine. And it's much better as a spectator sport. It can actually be broadcast live on TV. It's much more conducive to having people in the stands watching because you get to see multiple cars racing multiple times instead of sitting on the side of the road for 8 hours and seeing the maybe 12 cars pass by you one time. That's not that great for spectator sport. So I was first introduced to rallycross at the X Games. They started bringing in rallycross as an X Games event. And I really wasn't vibing with it, y'all. Like, I really wasn't. I felt kind of like, this isn't real rally car. What is this bastardized version of rally? I do not agree. That was my vibe. If you couldn't tell, that was my, snooty British self there. Anyway. Wow, I am on one today. But I really wasn't vibing with it. But since it was really the only type of rally racing that I got exposed to here in the U.S., I started to like it more. And I will say a lot of that had to do with Travis Pastrana and his involvement, because I've always been a fan of Travis Pastrana since he was a motocross rider, since he was just an awesome dude on Nitro Circus, since he was driving monster trucks and rally cars and jumping out of planes with no parachute on. I've always fucking liked the guy. He just seems like a fun type of dude who really likes going fast and doing crazy shit. Nitro Circus is still one of my favorite shows ever to be on MTV. There's not a lot of great quality that's ever been on MTV, but that was one of them. So after 2 years of being a part of the Nitro World Games, Travis made Nitro Rallycross its own thing. And this is the inaugural year of Nitro Rallycross. Again, developed by Nitro Circus, developed by Travis Pastrana. And it's cool because there's two different classes of cars. There's like the NRX Next classes, which are like the developmental class. And then you've got the supercars. And the supercars have drivers like Travis Pastrana, Scott Speed, Kyle Busch, Tanner Faust, Ken Block, Kevin and Timmy Hansen, Liam Doran, and Steve Arpin. These are like legit world-renowned drivers. Kyle Busch wasn't racing in NASCAR to go be a part of the Nitro Rallycross. And there was some amazing action, y'all. There were huge jumps. Like, this course was designed and built by Travis. And each week, the course is going to be a little different. And there's massive jumps and huge air and crazy turns and action and cars spinning and cars losing fenders. And, oh, my God, there was carnage out there. And there was amazing driving. I saw one of the most incredible chicane turn drifts from Tanner Faust I've ever seen. And it was fucking fun. Dusty. I still think I've got dust in some of my orifices, but it was fucking fun. And what I loved about it is it had the vibe of a smaller event to it. Like, Formula One has its place. It's cool seeing, billions of dollars of supercars and hypercars and yachts at the Monaco Grand Prix. But there was something about this event where you could literally walk into the pits. You could walk up and watch these mechanics working on Travis Pastrana's car. Talk to the mechanics. Mechanics were giving pieces of the fucking different cars away that had broken off. And the drivers were right there, like Kevin Erickson. who was driving in the supercar class, didn't make the finals. So he came up into the bleachers and was sitting directly in front of me. Just sitting there watching the fucking race, talking with us, laughing, reacting, being one of the crowd. And then they did this thing that was pretty cool. They did a Pit Viper, the sunglass company was there, and they sponsored the break before the final. And they brought out 10 PT Cruisers that were fully stock, other than having the windows and mirrors and, you know, all those things taken out. But they were completely stock, and they ran them around this same course. And watching and hearing stock PT Cruisers take jumps and then slam with no additional suspension work, it was something. Like, my back hurts thinking about how their back has to feel. And the event started with 10 cars. 2 of them were still driving at the end of it. And as much as I still fucking hate Pit Viper sunglasses, I hate them a little bit less now. A little bit less. Plus, it was really cool. Like, Travis Pastrana was just there. So I got to go meet Travis Pastrana. I got to go talk to Travis Pastrana. I got to literally thank him for helping put on an event like this. And what did he do? He said, no, thank you for being here. Cool fucking dude. Shout out to you, Travis Pastrana. You a real one. Plus, I got to meet motherfucking Nitro Circus legend Street Bike Tommy, too. He was out there emceeing and interviewing and shit. Like, it was fucking cool. And then to top it off, after 4 great races of supercar action, Travis Pastrana won his first event of the season. Shout out to him. The whole event was really well done. Plus, there were copious amounts of WRX STI Subarus out in the parking lot. It was awesome because I do love those cars. So I really hope that Nitro Rallycross has better success than previous Rallycross leagues, because I had a great time, and this is something I would happily support. I really hope that it grows further than just the 6 events this season. They're talking about going to Canada next season. They're talking about having an all-electric class as well. So there's a lot of things going on with it, and I'm here supporting On Board for all of it. So that was my favorite moment of the week. Come back next week when we talk about more fun shit that has occurred in the life of myself and in my journey through life. So that's what we got. We still got one more segment, y'all. So it's time to Ask an Addict.
It's time to Ask an Addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right, y'all. It is time to Ask an Addict. This is the part of the show where the resident addict of the Clean and Filthy podcast answers questions submitted by our listeners and our viewers. This is like a Reddit AMA, Ask Me Anything. They do not have to be recovery questions, as you'll find out every single week, because I just like answering questions. So if you have any questions that you would like to have answered here on air, send them over on any social media account or directly at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, and I would be happy to answer them. All right. First question says, I love this, why do we need community? Why can't we recover alone? Well, I will flat out say it's because an addict alone is in bad company. I know for a fact when I say the words of I can't, we can, that is a truthful statement. I am evidence of the importance of community. The importance, as we discussed earlier, in my recovery journey, if you will. As we talked about that, there's elements of having people around us, like-minded people who have been through the same things we've been through, who have seen the same things we've seen, who have experienced the same things we are experiencing or have experienced, and are working together to stay clean just for today. I don't know. Recovery might work if you do it alone, maybe. I know it couldn't work for myself. I proved that it couldn't work for myself. I proved that. Because if I'm doing it alone, who do I go to when I have questions? If I'm doing it alone, who do I talk to get answers? If I'm doing it alone, who do I share my pain with? Because we talked about pain shared is pain lessened. If I'm doing it alone, how do I learn anything new? How can I teach myself something I don't know? Especially if it's something I don't know that I don't know. It's not possible. It's not possible. Community is the reason that I have the opportunity to grow, that I'm able to understand and learn information to implement it within my life to grow, to develop spirituality, to develop spiritual principles, to develop a new way of life. I didn't do that. We did that. I don't have 3 years and 9 months. We have 3 years and 9 months. That's why we say the word we so constantly. Because I can't. We can. Period. That's the importance of community. That's why we can't recover alone. I tried. I tried not to use alone. I can't even say I tried to recover alone. I can't imagine that because I've learned so much from the community of the fellowship, from the people around me over the last 3 years and 9 months. I can't fathom trying to do that without the community element. That just doesn't seem like a thing. All right, next question. Great question. Says, who is my guilty pleasure pop artist? One I can tell you it definitely is not is fucking Taylor Swift. I've seen so many goddamn posts on social media about how amazing Red is. I officially had to mark myself safe from Red on fucking Snapchat. Can't stand Taylor Swift. But I will say it's a Justin. Not Bieber. Timberlake. I couldn't stand NSYNC. Like, I fucking couldn't stand NSYNC. But Justin Timberlake is a fucking beast. Like, his debut album of Justified, having Justified produced by the Neptunes and Timbaland almost exclusively was a great choice. Also, side note, how did it drop almost 20 fucking years ago? I feel like it was just a year or two ago that I was driving down the street listening to Like I Love You featuring the Clips, not knowing, like, am I allowed to listen to this? Like, is this cool? Because, yeah, it's got Justin Timberlake, and, yeah, he's a boy band dude, but it's got the Clips, and it's produced by the Neptunes. Like, does that even out? Huh? Like, there was literally times where a song would be on, and I would turn down Justin Timberlake's verse and then turn it up for Malice and Pusha T's verse. And then Cry Me a River off that album was fucking everything. That album still that song still slaps today. Like, you put Cry Me a River up against the majority of other shit that's out in popular culture right now, and it's as good, if not better. Plus, then his next album, Future Sex Love Sounds, Timbaland produced damn near the whole album, and it was straight fire. Like, the songs, Future Sex Love Sounds, Sexy Back, Let Me Talk to You, and how it transitions into My Love. Oh my God, I just got goosebumps again. Like, that initial drop is fucking everything. Song's amazing. Also, what goes around and how that transition into comes back around. I love long songs that have major beat changes in them. That's partly why I love The Weeknd's first album so fucking much, why I love House of Balloons so much, because I love these 7-minute long songs that have beat transitions and changes. I love that. Also, Losing My Way was a really good song. All those are really great songs. Also, fun fact, only one song on that album, on the album of Future Sex Love Sounds, was actually written down lyrically. Only one of them was actually physically written down. All of the rest were done without writing down on some Jay-Z status, I guess. I don't know. So, Justin Timberlake. Fucks with him. I'm going to go listen to that album immediately after this because I need to hear that just all right, you guys did not come here to listen to me horribly butcher Justin Timberlake songs. So let's get on to our next question, y'all. Next question. We got a lot of Marvel going on today, so we got another Marvel question, and I'll allow it because we already talking about Marvel. Also, in a couple hours, it might already be out now, the new Spider-Man No Way Home trailer is about to drop, so I know what I'm doing as soon as I get done recording this episode. Let's go. Of the 3 standalone trilogies in the MCU, which is your favorite? All right. So that means we're going to be talking about Iron Man versus Captain America versus Thor, since all 3 of them have trilogies. We are not going to be talking about Avengers trilogies. I'm not going to be doing that. We're going to be talking about those 3 completed trilogies, which there's about to be a couple more. We'll get to that later. But All three of these have much different trajectories in terms of where I like them. Iron Man. We'll start it off with Iron Man because it was the one who came out first. First film literally launched the MCU. It is one of my top 3 non-Avenger MCU films ever. Iron Man 1 is absolute god tier 5-star movie. Iron Man 2, good movie, not amazing. In my opinion, it would be in the lower part of the mid-tier of the MCU. Probably like a solid 3.75-ish stars, simply because I fucking love Robert Downey Jr. so much. Iron Man 3 was quite underwhelming. Too much going on. Tried to do too much. That whole end scene with all the fucking Iron Man drones, that shit was corny to me, personally. So it was kind of meh. To me, it would go at the top of the bottom tier. So we've got bottom tier, we've got mid tier, and then all the way up here, we've got God tier. So we're at the top of the bottom tier. I would say barely 3 stars, simply, again, because of Robert Downey Jr. Now we get on to the Thor franchise. Thor 1. First film was quite enjoyable. Quite enjoyable. I remember when I saw it in theaters, I really liked it. I would say it was upper mid-tier MCU films. Upper mid-tier. Solid 4.15 stars. Thor 2, also called Thor and the Dark World. Oof. Absolute bottom tier of the MCU. Like, if it weren't for the fact that they introduced one of the Infinity Stones and the importance of that, I don't know if there would be anything else really redeemable in that movie. It was the pacing, the direction. There were a lot of issues in that movie. To me, that's a 2-star movie. We're talking bottom tier. But then we get to Thor Ragnarok, the 3rd installment in the trilogy. And that is that is a great movie. It is a true top tier. Not God tier, top tier. These are my fucking rankings, y'all. At me all you want. Get at me on Twitter. Tell me my rankings are dumb. But we got bottom tier, we got mid tier, we got top tier, and we got God tier. That's what we're doing here for this one. Next one, I'll probably change it up because that's what I do. So Thor Ragnarok, I would say, is like a 4.92 star movie. Not a 5-star God tier movie. 4.92. So now we get on to Captain America, right? Okay. Captain America 1, First Avenger. Initially, I really didn't like it, man. I really didn't like it. I was underwhelmed by it. But I will say that it has gotten better with subsequent viewings, and the development of Bucky's storyline over the next 2+ films has made it to where I would say it's actually like the bottom of the mid-tier. Initially, it was probably like top of the bottom tier, but now I would say it's like bottom of the of the mid tier, about 3.25 stars. But then we get to Captain America 2: Winter Soldier, which was fucking phenomenal.
That part.
Absolute, definitely God tier movie. 5 stars. At me all you want. I don't give a fuck. Movie is phenomenal. Captain America 3, Civil War. Very good movie. Not quite as good as Winter Soldier, in my opinion. There was a lot more going on, and while I appreciate that that was our first involvement with Spider-Man in the MCU and T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, like, there were things that I love, but I didn't love Baron Zemo in that movie. I loved him in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I didn't love T'Challa in that movie. I loved him in Black Panther and Avengers Endgame and so on. So I would say it wasn't quite as good as Winter Soldier. But it is absolutely top of the top tier. I would say it is also 4.92 stars. I like it more than Ragnarok when I'm watching Civil War. And I like Ragnarok more when I'm watching Ragnarok. That's just how it is. It's like if I'm watching Civil War, I like it more. And I would say, yeah, that's better than Ragnarok. And vice versa. Still, there's a couple of the most epic moments in that final battle scene between Captain America and Iron Man with the assist from Bucky that are just, everything. So that's what we have. I will say by far the best of the trilogies is Captain America, even though the first movie was meh to me. Iron Man 1 was still my favorite of all of those, but I would say Captain America was the best trilogy. I would then say, I can't decide. Iron Man and Thor are both right there because it's like as consistently decent as Iron Man was versus pretty good, amazing, and fucking trash. Kind of evens out to consistently decent. So those are both tied. There you go. You're welcome. Thank you for the question. This is my fucking show. This is what we're gonna do. Deal with it. Thank you for your continued support. I love you all. But we also will have three additional trilogies to add within 2022 and 23 as Ant-Man's getting a third movie, Spider-Man's getting a third movie here at the end of this year, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Plus, we're going to have Thor 4 and Captain America 4 at some point in the future. So we're going to probably do another one of these lists at some point soon. So that's what you get for this week of Ask an Addict. Thank you, as always, for your continued questions. I love answering questions, so please send them over to me. Thank you so very much. Well, y'all, we are almost out of time. But you know we can't close up without them clean time shout-outs. This is the part of the show where we recognize various addicts who have celebrated continuous lengths of recovery. These are for all of the universally recognized milestones, such as a newcomer who is anybody with 29 days or less, 30 days clean, 60 days clean, 90 days clean, 6 months clean, 9 months clean, 1 whole year clean, 18 months clean, or multiple years clean, which is 2 or more. We give out them books for each year, so don't be alarmed. Plus, we also like to celebrate big whole numbers. So if you celebrated 100 days, 500 days, 1,000 days, 50 million days, 50 million days, send them over to your boy, and we will give you a shout-out on air. I love doing clean time shout-outs. So please send them over to me. You'll be doing me a pleasure. I appreciate that. So let's get into it. First and foremost, we've got Kimberly M. with 30 days clean. Great job, girl. Next up with 60 days clean, we got my boy Paul P. Hell yeah. Then with 6 months clean, we've got Nate. Well done. Then with 1 whole year clean from Facebook, we've got Ashley S. And then with 3 years clean, we've got Sabrina. And then with 8 years clean, we've got Andrew N. And next up with 11 years clean, all the way from the back East Coast, we've got Wendell. Well done. And finally, with 16 years clean, we've got Jason B. Well done. Congratulations, anybody and everybody who collected clean time today. If you didn't, don't use and guess what you will. That's literally how this program works. And remember that every day clean is a successful day.
That part.
Right, Schoolboy Q?
That part.
Yeah, Schoolboy agrees. All right, y'all. Well, we are officially out of time. My short episode still went long. I am a wordy motherfucker, I swear. I got to work on that. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys did as well. Hopefully you heard something you like. And if you did, please make sure to share it anywhere and everywhere you can. Again, a huge thank you to each and every one of you for being a part of this journey with me. If nobody's told you today that they love you, I love each and every one of you. Even if I don't know you, I love you, and I thank you for being a part of this. Again, a huge thank you to our episode music, The Incredible Anything by Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland. Huge shout out to Mad Decent Records. Huge thank you again to our VIP supporters. Please make sure to like, comment, rate, subscribe, check out all of our content, and share it wherever you can. I will see each and every one of you next week, 5 p.m. Love y'all.
I just wanna feel anything.